Focus. All right, click links, join channel, the various other links. So, what happened? Disney lowered expectations and jacks up prices and lowers growth estimates for Disney, Hulu, and ESPN, which I guess is the opiate of the masses. So, you end up paying for more, but you're getting Marxist propaganda. And some of the payment things have advertisements, which is, I mean, that's genius. You had cable TV where it was supported by ads. So now you have Disney Hulu. It's supported by ads, but you also pay a monthly fee for it. That's pretty clever. So what you're going to see from these shows is what you've seen so far is be as gay as possible, blonde man bad, and POC's good, and you pay for it, which absolutely blows my mind. Some guys are hooked on ESPN, watching men exercise while they sit on the couch getting fatter. But it's never been easier to end the love affair with watching other men exercise, especially with the recent events. By now, you have to know that the players and the owners absolutely hate the audience and the country that made them very wealthy. Plus, half of them are violent criminals. So making that mental switch for guys to turn off sports in the past several years, it's never been easier, and it's an important first step to leaving the matrix. People kind of went that way. I don't know when they had the baseball strike. I was like 20 years ago, and people kind of got a weird feeling about sports. And then there was, I mean, throughout the years, you've seen how they behave, and especially now with the recent civil unrest. It's like you look at the players and you look at the teams, you look at the sports, and you realize, oh, it's all part of a machine. And by supporting it, you're supporting that machine of these, Colin Kaepernick type of guys. So giving up the movies and shows at Disney and Hulu is also easy. It's made by people who are the type of people who fly Air Epstein Island. When I was a kid, which dates me, but it also kind of describes the geographic area, TV wasn't as big a deal because there weren't as many channels in that area. If you're in a city, maybe it was a whole different story. So kids, they played with toys, they played with the neighbor kids, and they read a lot of books, which, nowadays TV or shows, tablet TV, I just call it all the same. It's very isolating. And, to play with neighborhood kids, it's like you have to live in a neighborhood with a bunch of neighborhood kids, which thankfully our area was, but it seems like things are getting weird now where nobody knows the neighbor, and you might not even speak the same language as the neighbor. It's like, how do you turn a country into a commercial zone? Well, it turns out it's pretty easy. Anyway, so the puppet masters push TV and streaming shows and movies, just mindless content. It switched from, I don't know, maybe entertaining movies, or maybe sometimes movies that made you think, to content. It's a weird, it's like they're kind of shifting into just, take the Soylent Green, eat the bugs, which I guess literally they're doing because they're putting bugs in food now. It's cricket powder and things is actually, it's like they tell you what they're going to do, and then they all do it. And we just kind of accept, hey, 90,000 new IRS agents. Should we do something about that? That doesn't seem cool. Because you know who they're coming after. They're coming after people like you and me. Anyway, all this content keeps the cattle distracted. They are terrified that without the bread and circuses, people will look around at what these puppet masters are doing to the world and decide to cut the cords. TV and streaming isolates people and makes them more susceptible to propaganda. The media feeds them so many narratives and half-truths that they, CNN and MSNBC, no, it's our job to decide what the truth is. Like, are you out of your freaking mind? Like, the lack of self-awareness from the mainstream media is staggering. The thing is, people are hearing these carefully controlled narratives from the mainstream media, and after a while, they don't know what to believe. It's better to assume that everything the mainstream media says is just a globalist lie designed to hurt you. That's a very safe assumption. It's not always a lie, but it's the narrative that they want you to accept. If everything you know about a topic is from government schools or MSM, then you only know what they want you to know, and it's usually a lie or some version of a narrative. Everything I learned about the South, I learned from the Weinsteins in Hollywood who snuggle women and kids, either in Hollywood or on his buddy's island. The worst people on earth are pushing propaganda to kids. Any new piece of misandrous anti-white hatred from these Frankfurt School critical theory types, they'll instantly get on board and push it to your kids. You see the connection between social media, academia, and the mainstream media narrative. And once they come up with a new hot word propaganda phrase, it's like massively parallel networked and pushed across all these communication networks. And you know, it's like the meme of when they show all these different news outlets and they're all repeating the same phrase word for word, and they get caught doing it. It was like, yeah, they don't care. They absolutely don't care. But it lets you know that they're all on the same page. So it kind of makes you wonder, okay, so these are these parallel, massively networked connections. So let's look above them to who's pulling the strings on those networks. And go, oh, it's kind of weird that the power is consolidated into only a handful of companies that, you know, essentially control the narrative for, I don't know, 95% of communications. It doesn't seem good. And because you can see what narrative they're pushing, and you definitely know that it's not a good one. So anything that becomes topical on social media, which it's not originating really from social media, it's originating from these you know, Frankfurt School types who are in academia. But it's kind of really a parallel network between those media, social media, and academia. But anything that they push, any piece, just new ridiculous piece of nonsense, is instantly pushed out there. And if you're against it, somehow you're istophobic. And you realize, like, oh, wait, but they created that whole concept of istophobicism. You introduce something to the lexicon, and the media reinforces it as a shield with the subtle threat that if you're against this, the media will dox you, get you fired, destroy your life, fire your, essentially unperson you. It's like all this, I don't know, Gattaca World 1984 type of stuff. It's all really happening. I mean, you can look around and see it happening. Getting kicked off the mainstream social media has real world consequences. Getting threatened by CNN for making a meme about Donald Trump wrestling CNN, like getting and having them admit that they're threatening this guy publicly, and you realize, like, yeah, they probably used illegal hacking techniques to get this guy's information, and nobody has an issue with that. And then they openly threaten this guy, and nobody has an issue with that. And like the other media's, of course, they're not going to report on CNN. Like MSNBC's not going to report on them, because then, I mean, if they went down that endless loop, it's like when they start calling each other corrupt and pointing out how each one crafts a narrative of lies, you realize, oh, they're both crafting it, which is the truth. They're both crafting a narrative of lies. Anyway, so they raise that shield, like, oh, it's istophobic if you don't like this new piece of globalist propaganda. You realize, like, oh, not only is this globalist propaganda evil, but the people who are raising this nonsense shield, it's like none of it's real. It's like, I was going to say Scientology on a massive level, but it's Bolshevism on a massive level, where it's this mass hypnosis, this mass psychosis that you're able to, when you have control of the narrative, the media, you're able to get people to believe anything you push out there. And the threat is always there that if you're not on board with it, or if you're publicly not on board with it, you're going to have real world dangerous consequences. And then you start to look at the media as this NGO, which it is, in a different way, realizing, like, it kind of has the power of a government. Oh, it's just a private corporation. They can do what they want. Yeah, it doesn't really seem to be what the nation's about, to be ruled by billion-dollar corporations instead of being controlled by we the people. Anyway, there's a Blue's Clues. I mean, you know about the Netflix cuties thing. Blue's Clues had a beaver who had scars where her mammary glands used to be, because she had a surgeon remove them so she could feel more comfortable in her body that she has to mutilate to feel more comfortable. So this propaganda is for kids. You know, I wonder what effect it will have on children. Yes, kids are easily susceptible to this type of stuff. These giant media companies are actually in control of the country, and people don't think about it because addressing that issue requires change. And to admit to yourself that these companies have interests adverse to yours means that you can't support them anymore, or use the electric babysitter, which a lot of adults also use as an adult sitter, to keep their minds distracted on the most useless stuff. There's nothing more useless than caring about anything from the mainstream media, and to pay for the horror of being brainwashed by globalists is absolutely insane. Cutting the cord to this stream of distractions, these distracting bread and circuses, is actually a huge psychological step. It's like giving up social media. Well, you'll go through withdrawal because there's a dopamine serotonin addiction cycle going on there. They want you passive and brainwashed. The last thing they want is for active people to start paying attention to the man behind the curtain. But the story of the media manipulation is more fascinating than anything Spielberg could put out. Every movie, every piece of information that comes across the screen is a narrative. But when you put on the they live glasses, you see how this Hollywood machine has had this globalist narrative that has been spreading propaganda as far back to the beginning of Hollywood. And it depends on who's making the movie and what their narrative is, but it's always going to be a narrative. But once you start seeing it, you realize, oh, it's kind of obvious. Once you see it, it becomes very obvious, and yeah, it ruins a lot of stuff for you. But not everything's not. There's always going to be a narrative. But if you want to, like, one easy spectrum is like, well, is it a patriarchal, family-focused, nationalist, blood tribe narrative, a conservative narrative that conserves the future of your offspring and the stability of a people, versus this globalist narrative, which destroys everything by, the ways and means of their Machiavellian machinations. Anyway, check me out on Subscribestar, and I'll see you guys all next episode.